The night I found out who my husband really was, I was standing 3 feet away from him, smiling like a fool. He thought I didn't understand a single word. He thought his secrets were safe behind a language barrier. But what he didn't know was that I understood every word of German. He was whispering into that phone every insult, every lie, every plan to destroy me. My name is Ariba. I've been married to Sad for 4 years. To everyone around us, we were the perfect couple. Stable, successful, always smiling in photos. He worked in international logistics, often dealing with European clients. I worked from home as a freelance designer. Quiet life, comfortable life, or at least that's what I thought. When we first got married, I made a mistake, a small one. I told him I studied arts in university. I never mentioned that before switching majors, I had spent 2 years studying German language, fluent German, reading, writing, understanding. But when I changed fields, I stopped using it. It just never came up. And somehow he assumed I didn't know it. 3 months ago, Sad started taking late night client calls. He would step onto the balcony, speaking softly in German. I never interrupted. I never reacted. I just listened quietly from inside, pretending to scroll on my phone. At first, it was normal business talk. Deadlines, shipments, payments. Then one night, everything changed. He laughed, a cold, unfamiliar laugh, and said in German, "She's completely clueless. I swear, sometimes I wonder how someone can be this naive." My fingers froze over my screen. The man on the other end asked something. Sad replied, "Of course I'll transfer the property once the paperwork is ready. After the divorce, she won't even see it coming." Divorce? Property. Clueless. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. He continued, "I've already convinced her to put the apartment in joint ownership. Once the overseas investment clears, I'll move to Munich. Lena is waiting." Lena, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. I simply stood there, breathing slowly, while my entire marriage collapsed inside my chest. The next morning, I made him breakfast like always. I kissed his cheek. "How was the client call?" I asked sweetly. "Tiring," he sighed. Germans are very precise. Oh, the irony. From that day on, I started listening carefully, recording every balcony call, saving every whisper, every plan. I discovered Lena wasn't just a colleague. She was his girlfriend of over a year. They planned everything. Transferring our savings into an investment, selling my inherited land under the excuse of expanding his business, filing for divorce once he secured everything. And the most humiliating part, he would mock me in German. "She's emotional, easy to manipulate. She trusts me blindly. She'd never survive alone." Each sentence cut deeper than the last, but instead of breaking me, it sharpened me. If he wanted to play games, he picked the wrong woman. I contacted a lawyer quietly, a very good one. I showed him the recordings. He listened carefully, eyebrows lifting in surprise when I translated everything word by word. "Does he know you understand German?" the lawyer asked. I smiled. "No." "Good," he said. "Let's keep it that way." For weeks, I acted exactly the same, loving, supportive. Oblivious, I signed nothing without forgetting to read it. I delayed the land sale by claiming emotional attachment. Meanwhile, my lawyer froze our joint accounts legally under suspicion of fraudulent transfer attempts. Then I did something Sad would never expect. I reached out to Lena, not as Ariba, as Anna, a German consultant interested in her company, fluent German, perfect accent. Through casual conversations, I gained her trust. She had no idea who I was. She talked freely. About Sad. About how he promised to leave his boring wife. About the money he said he'd bring. One evening, I asked her directly, "Does his wife know?" She laughed. "She's too stupid to ever find out." That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Because now, I had everything. Recordings of Sad planning, financial fraud, messages from Lena proving the affair, evidence of asset manipulation. The day of our anniversary, I organized a small dinner at home. Candles, soft music, his favorite food. He looked surprised. "What's the occasion?" "For years." I smiled. "I thought we should celebrate properly." Halfway through dinner, I stood up and said gently, "Actually, I prepared something special." I picked up my phone and connected it to the speaker. His own voice filled the room. "She's completely clueless." His fork stopped mid-air. The next recording played. "After the divorce, she won't even see it coming." Color drained from his face. "Ariba," he started. I switched to German and said calmly, "Soll ich weitermachen?" Oder read das. Should I continue? Or is that enough? The silence that followed was deafening. You understand," he whispered. I looked him straight in the eyes. Every single word. For the first time in 4 years, he looked small. I placed printed documents on the table. "Our accounts are frozen. The property transfer is legally blocked. I've filed a case for financial fraud and emotional distress. And by the way, your dear Lena already confirmed everything." He tried to speak, but no words came out. "You said I wouldn't survive alone," I continued softly. "But you won't survive this." Within weeks, the legal storm hit him hard. His company suspended him pending investigation. His attempt to move funds overseas became evidence. The divorce settlement, let's just say the clueless wife, walked away with far more than he ever planned. The last time I saw him was outside the courtroom. He looked tired, broken. "I never thought you were capable of this," he muttered. I smiled calmly. "You never thought I understood." As I walked away, my phone buzzed. A message from an international design firm in Berlin, a job offer I had applied for quietly weeks ago. Munich was his dream. Germany would be my victory, because the truth is I was never clueless. I was just silent, and silence can be the most dangerous language of all. Berlin welcomed me with cold air and a strange sense of freedom. When the plane landed, I didn't feel like a divorced woman running away from her past. I felt like a woman stepping into a life that was always meant to be hers. The job offer wasn't luck, it was preparation. Weeks before confronting Sad, while he stood on that balcony whispering his betrayal into the night, I was building my escape. Updating my portfolio, reconnecting with old professors, sending applications quietly at 2 a.m. while he slept beside me, unaware that the clueless wife was rewriting her destiny. The design firm was impressed not just with my work, but with my German fluency. During the final interview, the director smiled and said, "Your language skills will help us expand our European clientele." I almost laughed. If only they knew how that fluency was forged into a weapon first. Life in Berlin wasn't easy at first. Small apartment, long work hours, learning to navigate a new city alone. But every challenge felt clean, honest. No lies hidden behind glass doors. No whispers on balconies. 2 months after I moved, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Lena. I didn't know. The message read in German. He lied to me too. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. What did he lie about? Said you were abusive, that you controlled him, that he had no access to money. I exhaled slowly. Of course he did. A man like Sad would never paint himself as the villain in anyone's story. He used both of us, she continued. When the investigation started, he blamed me, said I manipulated him. I wasn't surprised. Karma doesn't knock politely. It breaks doors. I typed back only one sentence. Now you know. She didn't respond after that. A week later, I heard through mutual contacts that Sad's work visa for Germany had been rejected due to the ongoing legal case. His overseas plans collapsed completely. The Munich apartment he once promised Lena, never purchased. The investment money, frozen. Sometimes I wondered if he thought about that anniversary night, about the exact second his world shifted. I didn't hate him anymore. Hate is heavy. And I was finally light. One evening, after work, my colleague Matthias invited me to a small gathering. "You've been working nonstop," he said. "You need to live a little." The old me would have declined, the married cautious, always checking with her husband version of me. But that woman no longer existed. At the gathering, I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing, for the first time in years. No pretending, no performing perfection. Just existing. Matthias asked casually, "So what brought you to Germany?" I paused for a second. "A long story," I said. He smiled. "The best ones usually are." And he was right, because revenge, I realized, isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about transformation. Months passed. The court finalized everything. The settlement secured my financial independence. I invested part of it wisely, saved the rest, and slowly began building something that was completely mine. One rainy afternoon, I received a final email from Sad. Subject, "Can we talk?" I didn't open it immediately. I made coffee first, sat by the window, watched strangers rush under umbrellas. Then I clicked. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he wrote, "but I never expected you to go this far. You destroyed my career." I read that sentence twice. Destroyed his career. No, he destroyed it the moment he underestimated me. He continued, "If you hadn't recorded those calls." I closed the laptop. There was nothing left to discuss. That night, I went for a long walk along the Spree River. The city lights reflected on the water, shimmering and unstable like my old life once was. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed love meant blind trust, the one who thought silence was weakness. She wasn't weak. She was patient. And patience, when paired with intelligence, becomes power. A year later, my name appeared on a major project presentation at the firm. My design led a campaign that expanded into 3 countries. During the celebration dinner, my boss raised a glass and said, "To Ariba for her brilliance and resilience." Resilience. If they only knew how deeply that word ran. Later that evening, standing on my balcony, yes, a balcony again, I received another notification, news article. Former logistics manager involved in financial misconduct case faces heavy penalties. His photo was there, older, tired. No confident smile. I didn't feel triumph. I felt closure. Because the real revenge had never been the court case. It was my success. It was the fact that he once said she'd never survive alone. And here I was, thriving alone, flourishing alone. Choosing companionship carefully, not desperately. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Matthias stood at my door holding a small cake. "You forgot," he said. "It's been 1 year since you joined the company." I smiled. 1 year since I chose myself. We stood on the balcony, talking about future projects, about travel plans, about life. There were no secrets in his tone, no hidden language, just honesty. And as the night grew quiet, I realized something powerful. The most dangerous thing about me was never my ability to understand German. It was my ability to stay calm while gathering the truth. Sad thought language protected him. He never understood that intelligence doesn't announce itself. It observes, it waits, and when the time is right, it speaks. If he ever tells this story, he'll probably say, "I didn't know she spoke German." But the truth is much deeper than that. He didn't know who I was at all, and losing me was never my punishment. It was his. 2 years after that anniversary night, I received an unexpected invitation. A global design summit in Munich. I stared at the email for a long time. Munich, the city he once promised to run away to. The place he had whispered about with such certainty, as if my absence from his life was already guaranteed. For a moment, I considered declining. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure I cared enough anymore. But then I realized something. Avoiding a city because of a memory means the memory still owns you. So I accepted. When my train pulled into Munich Central Station, I felt calm, not dramatic, not emotional, just aware. The air was crisp, the streets polished, the architecture elegant. I checked into my hotel and prepared for the summit like any professional would. On the first day, I presented our firm's latest campaign strategy in fluent German. The audience listened attentively. Questions came. I answered confidently. No shaking hands. No self-doubt. As applause filled the hall, I remembered his voice from years ago. "She'd never survive alone." I almost smiled at how small that sentence felt now. After the session, as people gathered for networking, I felt someone staring at me. I turned, and there he was, sad, standing near the back of the hall, looking like a ghost of the man I once knew. He looked thinner, less polished, his expensive suits replaced with something simpler. His eyes no longer carried arrogance, only a quiet discomfort. For a split second, our eyes locked. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked stunned. I could have walked away. I could have ignored him completely. That would have been easy. But easy isn't always powerful. So I walked toward him, each step steady. When I stopped in front of him, he swallowed nervously. "You look different," he said softly. "I am," I replied. There was an awkward silence between us, the kind that holds years of unspoken consequences. "I didn't know you'd be here," he added. "I didn't know you still worked in this field," I answered calmly. He looked down briefly. "Freelance consulting now. It's different. Different, that word again. The universe has a strange sense of humor." He cleared his throat. "You did well up there." "Thank you." Another silence. Finally, he said what he probably rehearsed in his head 100 times. "I underestimated you?" I tilted my head slightly. "You underestimated my silence." He didn't argue, because he knew. We stood there, two people who once shared a home, now separated by choices. I searched myself for anger, bitterness, regret. There was none, just distance. I was stupid, he admitted. I thought I was smarter than everyone. I thought I had control. "You never had control?" I said gently. "You just had secrets." That sentence hit harder than I intended. I saw it in his expression. "I lost everything," he murmured, and for the first time I responded not as a victim, not as a rival, but as a woman who had grown beyond revenge. "No," I said. "You lost what you didn't value." His eyes met mine again. This time there was no arrogance, only realization. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I believed him, but forgiveness doesn't mean access. "I hope you find peace," I replied. Not, "I forgive you," not, "It's okay." Just closure. As I turned to leave, he said one last thing. "In all those years, did you ever love me?" I paused. "Yes," I said honestly, "I did." And then I walked away, because loving someone once doesn't mean you belong to their future. That night, standing on my hotel balcony overlooking Munich's glowing skyline, I reflected on how strange life can be. The city that was once part of a betrayal had now become a milestone in my success. The difference. Back then, I would have followed someone here. Now, I arrived on my own terms. A message popped up on my phone. "Matthias, how's Munich treating the star presenter?" I smiled. "Peaceful," I replied. He sent back, "Good. You deserve peaceful." And that's when it truly settled in. The greatest revenge isn't humiliation. It isn't public exposure. It isn't watching someone fall. The greatest revenge is indifference. The ability to stand in front of someone who once broke you and feel nothing that shakes your foundation. The next morning before leaving Munich, I took a walk alone through the city center. I passed cafes, business offices, couples laughing, professionals rushing to meetings. Life moves forward whether you're ready or not. The question is, do you move with it? 3 years ago, I was a woman secretly recording balcony conversations, heartbreaking quietly. Today, I am a woman invited to speak on international stages. 3 years ago, he whispered in German thinking I was clueless. Today, I build strategies in German that companies trust. The language never betrayed me. People did, and I learned something powerful from all of it. Never announce your strength too early. Let them think you're naive. Let them think you don't understand. Let them reveal themselves completely. And when the time comes, don't scream, don't argue, don't beg, just act. As my train left Munich, I watched the city slowly fade into the distance. I didn't feel victorious. I felt evolved. Because the truth is, my husband didn't know I spoke German. But what truly changed everything was the day I decided to speak for myself. When I returned to Berlin after Munich, something inside me felt permanently settled, like a final page had quietly turned without drama. I didn't replay the conversation with sad in my head. I didn't analyze his apology. I didn't question whether I could have done things differently. For the first time in my life, closure didn't feel loud. It felt quiet. Weeks passed, and work became even more demanding. Our firm expanded into new markets, and I was assigned to lead a multilingual strategy team. Sometimes I would sit in meetings switching between English and German effortlessly, watching clients nod in approval. Every time I spoke confidently, a tiny memory would flash in my mind, him on the balcony, laughing, calling me clueless. Funny how the very thing he used to betray me became the foundation of my power. One evening, while reorganizing old files on my laptop, I found something unexpected. A voice recording. Not of him. Of me. It was from years ago, a practice recording I had made while improving my German pronunciation. I must have saved it absent-mindedly. I pressed play. My younger voice filled the room, slightly nervous but determined, reading out German passages slowly and carefully. I sat there listening to that old version of myself. She had no idea what life would throw at her. She had no idea that one day her fluency would protect her. She had no idea that silence would become strategy. I whispered softly to the empty room, "You did well." Because sometimes we survive things our past selves could never imagine. A few months later, something unexpected happened again. I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference in Frankfurt. The topic: resilience in professional spaces. They didn't know my full story. They just knew I had navigated international expansion successfully. But resilience isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in heartbreak. On stage, under bright lights, I looked at hundreds of women watching me. I didn't share details. I didn't expose names. But I told them something honest. Sometimes I said, the biggest advantage you have is what others assume you lack. The room grew silent. When people underestimate you, they reveal themselves more freely. They become careless. And in their carelessness, you find your clarity. I saw women nodding slowly. I continued, strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like listening. After the speech, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "You spoke exactly about what I'm going through," she said quietly. "I feel invisible in my marriage, like he thinks I'm not capable." I held her hand gently, then let him think that. I replied softly, "While you prepare." Her expression shifted from sadness to understanding. That moment meant more to me than any court victory, because revenge had transformed into wisdom. Later that year, I received news that Sad had left Germany altogether. Apparently, freelance consulting wasn't enough. He moved to another country for a fresh start. I didn't ask where. It didn't matter. Our stories were no longer connected. But life, as always, had one more lesson waiting for me. One rainy night, Matthias and I were having dinner at my apartment. Nothing dramatic. Nothing forced. Just comfort, conversation, mutual respect. He looked at me seriously and asked, "Can I ask you something personal?" I nodded. "After everything you went through, how do you trust again?" That question lingered in the air. Trust again. I thought carefully before answering. "I don't trust blindly anymore," I said. "I observe, I communicate, and most importantly, I trust myself first." He leaned forward slightly. "And if someone betrays you again," I met his gaze calmly, "then I'll survive again. Not because I expect betrayal, but because I now know my strength isn't dependent on anyone else's behavior." Months turned into another year. Berlin no longer felt like a new beginning, it felt like home. I moved into a bigger apartment with large windows and, ironically, a spacious balcony. Sometimes I stand there at night listening to distant city sounds. The difference now. There are no secrets floating in the air, no whispers I need to decode, only peace. And here's the part no one talks about in revenge stories. After the exposure. After the courtroom, after the glow up, there comes a phase where you must forgive yourself for not seeing red flags sooner, for loving deeply, for trusting fully. I forgave myself slowly. I stopped asking, how did I not notice? Instead, I started saying, I did the best I could with the information I had, because self-blame is just another prison, and I had already broken free from one. One evening, while organizing paperwork, I found the old anniversary photo from that night, the candles, the dinner, his stunned expression frozen mid-realization. I didn't feel anger looking at it. I felt proud. That woman sitting across from him, calm, composed, holding evidence in silence, she was reborn in that moment. Not as a victim, not as a revenge seeker, but as someone who understood her own value. People often assume revenge means destruction, but the most satisfying revenge I ever experienced wasn't watching him lose. It was watching myself rise, rising in confidence, rising in independence, rising in self-respect. And the most powerful part, I never had to scream, I never had to beg for truth. I simply listened, and when the time came, I spoke. If someone asked me today what changed my life, I won't say betrayal. I won't say divorce. I won't even say Germany. I'll say this The day I realized my silence was not weakness. It was strategy, and the moment I chose to use my voice, not to argue, not to defend, but to act, that's when everything shifted, because in the end, he thought the language barrier protected him. He thought secrecy made him powerful. He thought I was unaware. But the biggest mistake he ever made was confusing quiet with clueless. And the greatest decision I ever made was proving him wrong without ever raising my voice. Years have passed now. Long enough for the pain to lose its sharp edges. Long enough for the memories to feel like chapters instead of open wounds. When I look back, it almost feels like I'm remembering someone else's life, a woman standing behind a glass door, overhearing her own betrayal in a language she secretly understood, but she was me. And everything that followed shaped who I am today. 5 years after the divorce, I received something unexpected in the mail. A small, simple envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was from Sad. I hadn't heard from him since Munich. No messages, no calls, nothing. For a moment, I considered throwing it away. Some doors don't need reopening. But curiosity isn't weakness. It's closure seeking its final form. I unfolded the letter. His handwriting was messier than I remembered. I don't expect a reply. It began. I just needed to say something I should have said years ago. He wrote about regret, about arrogance, about how losing everything forced him to confront parts of himself he never wanted to see. He admitted that he didn't cheat because I was lacking. He cheated because he craved validation, because he wanted to feel superior, because he mistook manipulation for intelligence. One sentence stood out. You didn't ruin my life. You revealed who I truly was. I read that line twice, not because I needed validation, but because it confirmed something I had already learned. Revenge doesn't create truth. It exposes it. At the end of the letter, he wrote, I hope you're happy. And for the first time, I answered that question honestly in my own mind. Yes, I am. Not because he suffered, not because I won, but because I rebuilt. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, not as a painful reminder, but as proof of growth. Then I stepped onto my balcony, letting the evening air brush against my face. Berlin's skyline shimmered quietly. Matthias joined me a few minutes later. Over the years, what we built wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was steady, respectful, transparent. He knew my full story now, every balcony whisper, every recorded call, every courtroom moment. And he never once felt threatened by my strength. That's how I knew the difference between love and possession. You look thoughtful, he said gently. Just remembering? I replied, anything heavy? No, I smiled, just distant. We stood there in comfortable silence. There's something powerful about standing next to someone who doesn't require you to shrink. A year later, we got married quietly. No extravagant ceremony, just close friends, simple vows and honesty. During my vows, I said something that surprised even me. I promise to always speak when something feels wrong, and I promise to listen when you do. Because that's what I learned the hard way. Communication isn't just about language. It's about courage. As my career continued to grow, I eventually launched my own consulting firm specializing in cross-cultural branding, language, strategy, perception. Funny how life circles back. During one of my keynote speeches at an international conference, someone asked me during Q&A, what's the most important skill in global communication? The audience waited for something technical. I answered simply, listening, not just to words, but to tone, to patterns, to inconsistencies. Listening saved me long before I ever spoke. After the session, a journalist approached me and asked if I had ever faced a moment that tested my resilience personally. I paused. Then I smiled. Yes, I said. And it taught me that silence is only powerful when you control it, not when it controls you. That night, as I returned home, I realized something profound. The story of my betrayal no longer belonged to Sad, it belonged to me. He was a chapter, not the author. Sometimes people expect dramatic endings in revenge stories, a final confrontation, a public downfall, a humiliating apology. But real endings are quieter. They're found in stability, in peace, in waking up without anxiety twisting in your chest. They're found in standing on a balcony years later and realizing you're no longer listening for secrets. You're listening to your own breath. And it's steady. One evening, while organizing old digital files, I finally deleted the recordings. Every whispered insult, every arrogant plan, gone. Not because they didn't matter, but because they no longer defined anything. I didn't need evidence anymore. The outcome had already spoken. As I closed my laptop, I caught my reflection in the dark screen. Confident, calm, unshaken, and I thought about that first night again, the night he laughed softly in German, believing I was unaware. If I could step back into that moment and whisper something to that version of myself, I'd say, stay quiet. Listen carefully, your strength is already there. Because the truth is, my husband didn't know I spoke German. But what truly transformed my life wasn't exposing him, it was discovering myself. Discovering that I could endure humiliation without collapsing. That I could plan without panicking. That I could walk away without begging. He thought he was building a future without me. In reality, he was pushing me toward a future far greater than anything he could have offered. And if there's one final thing I've learned, it's this. Never underestimate the person who is listening silently. Because while you're busy speaking carelessly, They're building their power quietly. He thought I didn't understand his words. He never realized I understood my worth even more, and that was the real language he failed to speak.